Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be discussing a board meeting from back in September. So this specific board meeting was from the Kern High School District, which is located at 5801 Sundale Avenue in Bakersfield, California, 93309. So Kern High School District is home to 39,000 students, and they oversee 18 total high schools. So these are all students 9th through 12th grade. So like I said, they're all in high school. So these board members meet about twice a month. It really just depends on how often they feel they need to have meetings. So one month they might only meet once, maybe like the first week of the month, and other months they might meet like 3 times. It really just depends on what they feel is necessary, but on average, it's about twice a month. So there are 5 board members in total, including the president. His name is Philip Peters, and he is the one who did most of the conducting throughout this meeting, aside from all the public speakers. The president is the one who did most of the talking. So I'm first just going to do a quick overview of how this meeting was organized and laid out. So they opened this meeting with, of course, the flag salute, followed by an overview of the agenda. So they kind of reviewed the agenda very briefly, discussed what was going to be talked about, and if there were any changes to the agenda. They also approved other times for board meetings for later in the school year. Because this was back in September, school had just started, so they were doing more of that kind of stuff, getting ready for this school year. So following that, they took news from the schools, so they talked to the superintendent as well as other people from the high schools who came to share some news, which I thought was really interesting. One of the things that was mentioned was that there's a pool being built by Independence High School, and this is something that the Kern High School District has never done before. It's a project they're really excited about, and in this meeting they discussed when they would get approvals and more time to discuss this facility later on. So that was really all that was said about it. It was evident that the board members were excited about it, and that's pretty cool because I live near Independence, so I don't know if it's going to be public or how they're going to use it, but it was a pretty cool thing to hear about. Other than that, they talked about enrollment status. So this year they actually had more students enrolled into their high schools than ever before, which is crazy because we already have 18 high schools, and it just seems like every year they get more and more packed full of kids, and this year they had the highest number of enrollment, which is pretty awesome. It means that our school districts are doing great. Following news from the schools, they welcomed public speakers. So we had quite a few public speakers at this meeting. And the reason being was that the district was late on approving policies. There were quite a few policies that were meant to be approved back in July, and it was now September, so of course they had plenty of members from the public express their concerns and their thoughts on these policies. So that's something I'll talk about a little bit later. Following their public speakers, the board members had their own private little meeting, which of course was still discussed in front of the public, which I found really, really interesting because you get to see how their minds work, how they processed all of the information that was given by the public. You got to hear their own personal opinions instead of just like a group unanimous vote. You really got to see how these policies how they reach a conclusion on these policies. So while some board members were totally all for one policy, some might be completely against it. So during this meeting, they kind of let the public know why some policies were taking longer to be approved than others, and all of that information. So following their meeting, they did an approval of motions that they felt could be approved for the night. And shortly after that, they took more school news, and this time it referenced school absences. So one of the speakers mentioned that the last school year they had more absences than would be typically normal for the district. So the board members wanted to know what we could do to find more information about why these kids were missing so much school, the amount of absences that were excused or were based off suspensions. They wanted to know all of the information. So that wasn't gathered for this meeting, but I do believe that the speaker said that he was going to try to have more of it for the following meeting. So following that school news about the absences, they just closed the meeting for the night, and that was about it. The meeting was about an hour long, maybe a little less, all jam-packed of information that I'm going to get into real quick. But first, let me share my initial impressions about this meeting. So at first it seemed really formal. It almost felt like being in a courtroom. So I thought that we were kind of just going to sit there and listen and watch these board members discuss important policies and information like that. But I soon realized that it was actually the public who had a lot of control and say over how this board meeting was going to go. So because there were so many public speakers, it really made it an interesting evening. So the board members really had to take into consideration all of the thoughts and concerns that the public expressed. And I thought that was pretty interesting to watch because it would have been very easy for the board members to kind of just throw the public opinions to the wind and go with their own personal opinions. But they didn't. They really made sure that the public felt as though their voices were being heard and that they mattered, which I really appreciated. So, yeah, I quickly changed my opinion about how this meeting was going to go once I started to see the impact that the public did have. So the main concern during this meeting were policies regarding immigration. So the speakers mostly all talked about the same thing. Basically, everyone wanted to ensure student safety on campus. So they wanted a policy put in place that government action could not be taken on campus, that their students felt safe coming to school no matter, who they are, where they come from, that they would feel safe, that they would know that nobody could come and take them away. And even if in the chance that that did happen, that at least parents would be informed. They wanted a system put in place to where things were organized, that staff and teachers and the principal and administration would all know what to do in these circumstances. And at this time, there was no policy put in place. So, administration wouldn't know what to do in the instance that government action was taking place on their campus. So this was a really big thing. Every single public speaker mentioned it, and that's what stood out to me the most. And I kind of referenced it back to our textbook, and I believe it's in chapter 2, in page 51, where they talk about school-wide safety programs. I think it's really important to ensure student safety. I'm sure anybody else would agree that student safety should be a top priority. Students need to feel like they're in a safe environment. They should want to come to school because they know they're going to be safe, and if putting a policy like this in place is what it takes to get these kids to come to school and to feel welcome, then I'm all for it. Of course, it's not just that easy. All of the board members have to agree upon a vote to even vote on the policy then and there, which they could not come to an agreement on. They felt as though they needed more time. They did not feel as though they had enough information to come to a conclusion unanimously. So, although there were some board members who were all for the policy, there was some who were not, and that's where they kind of struggled. So a policy did not get approved that night for immigration. However, it was discussed in detail, and they did let the public know that they were going to take their thoughts and opinions into consideration, and that they were going to take it to heart, which I thought was pretty cool of them to do, because once again, it's not something that they actually needed to say or needed to do, but you could tell that they really wanted to make the public feel as though their voices were being heard. So that was basically all that meeting was about. It was maybe an hour long, and it was so full of information. I was interested the whole time. I had no idea that the board meeting was going to be like that, so I'm really glad that I got to attend. I found it really interesting, and let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.